What is up, everybody? Josh Tapp here again, and welcome back to the Lucky Titan podcast. And today we are here with John Bennardo, and I am stoked to be here with him because John and I just had a really good conversation prior to this. He's got such an interesting story. He started out as a writer, then ended up going into documentaries, into videographies, launched those, and then he has kind of gone full circle back to writer and has written a new book, which is going to be an amazing one that I want to talk about here, but just such a cool story. And I am excited to talk with him about his journey. And really, you're going to see with this episode, it's going to be a little bit different than our typical episode. And I've been trying to throw some of these in here because it really helps break up the business tips, right? Sometimes we just got to have a great, amazing guest who I'm like, this person is just a good human being. So that's what John's here for today. And John, first off, say what's up to everybody, and then we'll hop in.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for having me, Josh.
Yeah, this is going to be exciting. So, John, first off, I want to ask you about the documentary side because, what got you to, most people think documentary and they're like, boring, right? But what got you into that world?
Well, I got to go backwards for a little bit because my nature is as a writer. I was always a writer, and I loved movies as well. So as I got older and went to film school, obviously you combine the two loves, and instead of writing books and short stories, you write films. So as I got older, I found the easiest film to make that doesn't have to be financed and scripted to that way is to do documentaries. I love education and learning more about things. I did a couple of short films, one about Cy Sperling, the Hair Club for Men guy, the guy that said that he recently passed away. I'm also a client, right? I'm not just the owner, I'm also a client, if I remember. And I did another one on a race car driver. And I said, what's going to be my next project? I love having my own self projects. And I have $2 bills stuffed in my desk drawer, as many of your listeners may have one tucked away in their wallet and whatnot. And I said, I'm going to explore this a little bit. I'm going to do something fun with this. And again, this is coming from my humor background as a writer. And long story short, I discovered so many unbelievable things about the $2 bill, and the thing just took off. I raised money on Kickstarter. Once I started researching, I had people reaching out to me, telling me that they were involved in the re-release of the $2 bill in 1976. And it just blew up into this amazing film, which ended up winning some awards on the film festival circuit and whatnot. But it's not so much that I'm a documentarian per se. It was that I was looking for a topic to tell a story about and do so in a fun way, because the $2 bill is a quirky piece of currency. And it just evolved into this little bit more of a serious educational documentary with some humor in it that became like one of the greatest things I've ever done. The project is exceptional. People watch it and are always surprised that there's so much to learn about $2 bills, starting with the fact that they're not rare. We can go a long time on this podcast if you want, but they're not rare. They're still in print. And that right off the bat blows people away. And that's just barely anything that I'm telling you about in the film. That's just scratches the surface.
Well, and I love that you've bridged it with something else you're extremely interested in, which is humor, right? Because I know for me, I'm actually a real documentary nerd. I really like watching documentaries. So shoot me the link to yours. I'd love to watch it. But it's really intriguing because the ones that just suck you in, it's not the, what's his name? The National Geographic guy. I cannot remember his name. Anyways, the voice of National Geographic, right? It's not the boring, like, here is the penguin, right? The documentaries that are amazing are the ones where it really, truly documents the story, and it pulls you in, kind of sucks you in based off of good storytelling and then incorporating humor into it as well. And you've kind of done that same thing with your book, right? Because now the book is about a whole other like social, cultural issue and putting humor with it, right? Because other people are going to write books about the goods and the bads about this, right? You're saying, let's make this a funny book.
Yeah, in fact, the book is about cancel culture, something we're living with in a big way. And I like to satirize things. I don't think we should take things too seriously in this world. I think that's one of our problems, is everybody is so easily offended, which is kind of what the book is about as well. But, when I spend evenings laughing, I'm in a better place in my life. I'll put look for something on Netflix. I'll end up watching a comedy or just a comedian do a 1-hour thing. The more I laugh, the better I feel. And when I write, I make myself laugh. And I also know that if it's funny enough, other people will laugh. And that's kind of the value that I like to bring to people is, how can I make you laugh? How can I have you sit down and entertain you, forget your problems for a little while and read this and just laugh, and laugh at yourself or laugh at others in society. So we're living in this world with cancel culture where the slightest thing that you do wrong gets you in trouble and could end your career. And I said, this is outrageous. Everybody's so offended by anything. And I'm sure somebody's listening today who might not want to admit it, but they probably fit into that category where they get offended when they really don't have to be. So the book is about a celebrity who has a typo in a tweet. It's an innocent typo, and it turns it from something positive to something extremely offensive. And then once he's offended the LGBTQ community with this, then he becomes a bad guy in the press. And while everybody's piling on, people from his past come out and say, well, this thing he said 20 years ago offends me. And this thing he did 30 years ago offends me. And this, like, everything that he's ever done in his past is dredged up and used against him to make him one of the most hated people on the planet. And he's guilty of nothing. I mean, he's just the most innocent, sweet guy who is being dragged down because of a typo. And that's the name of the book, Just a Typo. And it really just satirizes this world we live in where you can't make a mistake or you're in serious trouble and your career's over.
It's almost like a Mr. Bean-esque book, right?
A little bit, not that slapsticky.
Yeah, not that slapstick. Good. The innocent guy who just like everything's going wrong for him.
Yeah, I mean, his Halloween pictures from 25 years ago, you know, and there was a senator, I forget who it was, a few people, this happened in real life, it was wearing blackface in his yearbook like 30 years earlier. And yeah, okay, I'm not going to sit here and defend it one way or another, but it was 30 years ago when times were different. The kid's probably out drinking and that's his costume. He's not thinking about who he's offending. I mean, cut the guy a break. But then 30 years later, now he's a senator and now you're racist because you had blackface 30 years ago. Yeah, maybe it's not for me to say again. I'm not going to pass judgment on that. But the point is that this is 30 years ago, you know, and now you're offended. You weren't offended for 30 years
right.
Until he became a senator and there was an issue that something came up that he voted on in Congress. But it's ridiculous. And something that you say to somebody 25 years ago now is offensive. In fact, just in the news today, just to date when this show was recorded, I just read that the Muppet Show, remember the old Muppet Show?
Yeah.
They're putting it on Disney Plus. And it's coming with a warning label now that there are racial stereotypes and things in it because some of the shows have, you know, Afghani people on it or someone from the South and they're out in the deep South. They got all the costumes. So they're trying to avoid being branded as offensive.
Right.
This was the Muppet Show. You and I grew up on this show a long time ago, but so I saw it on Twitter today and I saw it on the news. It was actually on, I think Good Morning America had a piece on it this morning that people are trying to avoid backlash from the Muppet Show from 25, 30 years ago because of some of the set design and some of the Muppet characters. I mean, it's ridiculous, but they have to do it.
Yeah. And unfortunately, yeah. And I mean, we don't go into huge like social issues here on the show, but I think what I love about the book and the idea it's bringing forward is that, especially for entrepreneurs, we get very hyper targeted for bigotry, racism, all these different things, right? And so it's our job to say, okay, how can I bring light to things without having to like cross over those lines, right? I really like working with people who they're like, you know what, this is what I believe. They're unapologetic about it, but they're saying they're not trying to force their beliefs on other people. And they're the funnest people to work with as well, because they're passionate, but they're like, this is just what I believe what you want. And I don't hate you one way or another.
Yeah, I'm just making a point. I'm not really making social commentary. I mean, to a degree, I'm saying, as I said before, that I believe we're an overly sensitive society. That's the extent of there's no agenda. There's no politics in the book at all. There's no politics at all. I just want to shine the light on you and hold the mirror up to you and say, this is who we are right now. And this is who we become. And I think what makes it so funny is that you recognize the behavior. Right. Just like the Muppet example. I would have put it in the book if I could go back and rewrite it. But this is the behavior where we have to take the Muppets from 20 years ago. And we now have to put a warning up on the screen because I don't want somebody from another country to get offended because there's a Muppet dressed like an Egyptian. Yeah. I mean, come on, that's where we are. And so here you are. Here's this book where I say, let me just show you now everything that we do. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, you'll sit down and you laugh, and then, there's no political conversation that goes on after it. It's just you laugh and you put it down and shrug your shoulders and move on to the next thing. So a lot of fun. I had a great time writing it, and I know people who read it will really enjoy it.
See, and I think if you're laughing out loud yourself when you're writing it, you're like, people are probably going to like this. Or they're just not going to get your humor altogether, and you're going to.
That's possible. It's been well reviewed. It's been well reviewed so far, but I do know that humor there's certain sensibilities, and some people may not get it, and the people that do will find it outrageous. I mean, I kind of like in my writing to like Dave Barry, just absurd. I mean, there's some silly situations in there. There's a little bit of juvenile humor in there. It kind of dips into that a little bit here and there. It's what makes me laugh. Right. And I stopped worrying about. I would love my audience to love it, but I'm trying to write what I enjoy, because if I can't enjoy it, make myself laugh, my audience is never going to respond to it. So that's kind of one thing I learned growing up and doing everything I've done, is that you do what makes you happy. And then that should shine through. One of the reviews I got back on the book said that you could tell the writer's having a great time writing his book. And that's like the best compliment I can receive. So when you read it, you'll know that, hey, this guy's having a great time. I'm going to have a great time as well reading it.
Yeah, and I love that. Well, and I know we didn't even talk about this at the beginning, but about going this direction. I'd like to kind of talk about how to incorporate humor into boring topics, because I mean, as entrepreneurs, we struggle with that a lot, right? And I think so. I'll give some context on this. We recently hired a guy who's going to build out our Instagram. If you know me, I really do not like Instagram. I'm not an Instagram guy. I'm not the picture taking guy. I'm not going to go flash my cleavage so that I can get likes, right? And he's been really, he's actually been kind of opening my mind to how we can grow without me having to be that way. And so I'm just kind of curious how you would say, okay, teach a business concept, which all of our listeners are teaching business concepts, right? If you're teaching a business concept, how do you incorporate humor into that?
Well, what I would say is that you just have to think of like Super Bowl advertising. What are the most memorable Super Bowl ads you've seen? They're the ones that make you laugh, right? The ones that are being talked about the most the next morning are the Doritos commercial where the guy goes into the time machine. He thinks it's a time machine, right? And he comes out and the kid's been replaced by an old person. And these are the ones that you remember. So I think when you use humor to grow your business, you're branding yourself as like one of the guys, doing the air quotes here, but you're one of the guys. You're like me. We're hanging around, we're having fun, we're shooting the breeze. But people are going to remember you more if you make them laugh. I mean, that's like a universal truth. If you make somebody feel good, they're going to like you. They're going to remember. Any relationship is based on that. If you insult somebody and act like a jerk, you're not going to get very far. If you smile and you engage them and you can make them laugh, they're always going to remember you, right? Who the most popular guys in high school made the girls laugh. I mean, my wife says one of the best things is I make her laugh. I mean, so again, to your point, it's just businesses can and should use humor. And if you don't know how to do it, hire somebody who does, because by branding yourself as someone who may be very serious about whatever business you're in, but also can look at the light side of things and not take everything so seriously, my opinion is you're going to stand out amongst your clientele that way.
Yeah, and I love that because, I mean, if you're not good at it, hire somebody else, right? That's just something we talk about all the time on the show. But it's so funny because when you're trying to write or do something with humor, right? I mean, in a commercial, for example, I like the Liberty Mutual commercials for some reason. Those just poke my fancy, right? They're very funny to me, but my wife thinks they're the dumbest thing on the planet, right? But it's really interesting because no matter where you're at on the spectrum of thinking it's funny, it's memorable. And it's so funny to watch. I mean, you watch a lot of these like videography type companies, the Harmon brothers. What's his name? I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Anyways, they build these commercials as a way. It's completely built around humor, but it's really not even highly produced a lot of times. That's what's crazy to me. But it locks it into your brain.
Yeah, you don't need to do anything special. I mean, in some of the successful YouTube channels, even that you see, there's a dad, I think, that just runs around with his phone and films his kid playing with toy sharks. I don't know if that's still one of the more popular YouTube channels, but they had millions of subscribers. All he did was sit at the dinner table with his phone and go rah, rah, and just pretend he was a shark and move the phone back and forth. And the thing had millions of views. There's no production value at all, which makes someone like me upset because I put production value in anything I do. That's why it takes a little longer to produce content. But you just need to make somebody laugh. That's really all it is. And I can't make it any more simple than that. And so for me to write a book that makes people laugh, I just, you can sit home on a Saturday afternoon, read this book and giggle and laugh. And I feel like I've done my job if it works that way.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that. Yeah. And it's funny to watch that there's so many people. I mean, I know it's like my dad, for example, he's kind of an old timer entrepreneur, had a construction company and a lot of traditional businesses. But he'll watch these kids, 14 years old, do these just stupid things and make hundreds of thousands of dollars off of their videos. And it used to frustrate me too, but now it's really intriguing to watch because you're like, what was the science behind this? Because a lot of them, it was a one-hit wonder, right? And then there's others of them who it just goes and goes and goes. One of my new favorites is this guy. He has a YouTube channel about stigmas between a husband and wife. It's a really, really funny channel because he's talking very sarcastically in a sense, but it's like his wife asks him to do something, and he's like, I would absolutely love to do that, even though I want to be out with my friends playing poker or whatever, right? Funny channel, but all of his videos are hitting, and he's one of the few people I've seen who can really nail it with every single video, and continually get good outreach. It's funny to watch the science behind it and say, okay, what did they do? It was nothing. All it was relatable humor. It had nothing to do with being like super creative. It's those dumb stigmas we all know about, but he just documented it.
Yeah, it's just one niche. You need one niche to figure out, and then people know exactly who you are. That's branding. And then people will be drawn to you. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, I made this documentary about $2 bills, and I built a YouTube channel around it because people were interested. I had all this extra material, and I've grown that channel to over 20,000 subscribers. Problem is, I enjoy it. I love $2 bills, but that's not really my niche. I kind of built it up because it's there and it's growing, and I create new content for it. And plus, you can only take it so far. How many videos can you make about a $2 bill? I'm trying to branch it out to like more currency, and there is a following on YouTube for people interested in currency, believe me, and I've tapped into it. But it's hard to make those videos funny. I have to change the brand to do that. So now I've got my other brand here as a humorist, and maybe I start my own personal channel and do more fun stuff in those lines. But it is interesting that you just need to have one niche, and if you can make people laugh at it, with it, you can be very successful. But you have to have that vein. Like I said, if you don't know how to be funny, you got to hire somebody, you get somebody to help you, because you either got it or you don't.
Yeah, I love that. So I think the $2 bill space would be funny to go through and actually buy things with $2 bills and just record people's reactions to it. They'd look at
that's what I was going to do. That's when I first thought of the documentary, to go back, that's what I was going to do. I was like, well, what is this going to be? It's going to be me running around with a hidden camera at 7-Eleven. But then as I researched it and learned more about it, and found, then it was an incredible story about how the $2 bill connects people. A woman's husband died in 9/11. The way they identified his body is they found his wallet with the $2 bill that they had shared when they got engaged. This is touching interview I had to do and put it in the film. People are crying during the movie. Then there's other sections where we have hidden cameras and it's quirky and fun. But what an experience that was to do that. I kind of lost my train of thought. But the $2 bill, it's an amazing thing. And it took me to a place, but now I'm in another place. Now I'm back to being the humor guy I was when I was younger, and writing stuff that's funny.
Yeah. And I love that. I mean, honestly, what's so funny to me is most of us think that it's this big complex thing, but I would challenge all of our listeners that look at your messaging and say, how can I put humor into it? Nobody likes the boring, like you open those emails from people and you're like, oh, this is ridiculous. I don't want to read through this, right? You just delete them. There's this guy, Ryan Dice, if you know who he is, big marketing guy. I love his emails because every single one is funny. I mean, I don't even care what the content is, but I read it because it gives me funny ideas that we could put into our emails. But they're the ones I remember. And weirdly enough, I've probably spent tens of thousands of dollars with him, probably because of that. If I were to directly track it to that.
Absolutely would say that's the reason, because he makes you laugh. I mean, and even if you are not funny yourself, you appreciate people who are, and you're always attracted to the person. As I mentioned earlier, the girls are going to be attracted to the guys that can make them laugh, and the business client is going to be attracted to the business person who is funny, even if his business isn't funny. If you have a fun personality, that's authentic. So that would be something I encourage people to do, is find a way to get humor into your marketing or your product or anything. Just have a few jokes handy. My dad was a lawyer, but he would be asked to speak on occasion. He had this book of funny one-liners. And before he prepped any speech, he would find 3 or 4 good zingers or lines and work them into what he was talking about, so that he wasn't giving a 15-minute boring speech. He was giving a 15-minute speech with a really good joke every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so it's a way to be engaging too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I read this book a couple of years ago for my MBA program, and it was about, I was Talk Like Ted, Carmine Gallup. That's the guy who wrote it. Such a good book. But that was actually, so what they did is they analyzed 200 TED Talks, the 200 top TED Talks, and said, what are the similar factors throughout these that make a good talk? And humor was absolutely one of them. They're like, if you don't have humor, it doesn't hit. None of the interviews that have passed the hundreds of millions of views have been dry. All of them are hilarious, and they're shocking and hilarious, but it just pulls you in. So Anyways, that's intriguing. I love that stuff.
Yeah, this conversation has kind of crystallized that, because I know we were talking before we went on air, and we weren't talking about that as much. And here we are now that we started the show, and that's where we're going. I think because you and I both realize even more now that we're sharing these ideas and stories, that humor is where it's at. So that makes me happy that I wrote a humor novel. Maybe I should be branching my business out to write humorous speeches and commercials for people. And there you go. Like, I invent a new business right here on the air. Call me if you need something funny written. I can help you out. Because I've done that for my clients. I do videography for people, and there's not a lot of humor in there, but I do have one legal client who used to hire me to do their annual seminar video, and they made that funny. It's like a welcome video to all the people that came to their seminar. And that was the best job I ever had, because I was helping them come up with funny stuff to play off their personalities. And it's just everything about humor is, I think, the summation here we're talking about. There's no downside to being funny or having humor in something that you're doing. No downside at all.
Yeah, love it. Well, and let's tie this up with a pretty little bow. First off, where can people connect with you? I mean, obviously we've been talking about the book. So first off, where can they get the book, and then how can they connect with you?
Yeah. So what's interesting is I brand myself a couple of different ways, because I have a video production company, but that's not where you can find me. It's one place. But as far as my book goes, I have a personal website with my full name, johnbennardo.com, and it's JOHNBENNARDO.com. There's information about me and a couple. I've actually written a book about $2 bills in addition to making the film. So I have a second book out there as well. But that's where you can find me, johnbennardo.com. There's links to Instagram and Twitter and all those places there. So that'd be the place to start. The book is available. I have the book here for those of you that are able to watch this. I know we're also being audio, but I'm holding it up here for the screen. It's called Just a Typo. It's available on Amazon, and it's, like I said, a great, quick, fun read that it's going to make you laugh, I guarantee.
So you can send them a very hateful message and make him cancel if it doesn't make you laugh.
That's right. You can cancel me. Listen, we're all one step away, right? I mean, if you have all these podcasts that you're doing, Josh, and if you make one mistake or say something inappropriate, just takes one person to come out and criticize you. And I mean, that's the world we're living in. I don't even know how comedians get by, because you can't say anything without offending people.
Yeah. And I think it's the ones who rock it, because unfortunately, or fortunately, is the haters are the ones that are your best branding. They yell about how dumb you are, but then the people who disagree with that opinion will love you. And it's really intriguing, because people are trying to hide from that. It's like, just embrace your opinions. Doesn't matter. I mean, if Facebook kicks you off, I mean, if our podcast got kicked off iTunes, I'd be really sad, but that's just the nature of what it is, right? I mean, you just move forward, do what you can, and you'll grow a following. So
be who you are.
Be who you are. Love that. So I do want to ask you, John, one final question, and I do want to caveat this as well. I need to interrupt this for a second and say, everybody, make sure you go to johnbennardo.com. I will put a link in the description for that as well. But to finish this off, John, what is one final parting piece of guidance you could give to our audience as a way to finish this off?
I would say, because I have another business that, like, I think I didn't get into the whole story, but I have a video production business because I love movies and film, and I turn that into shooting things for people. I wrote the book that I wrote because I felt like I was burning out a little bit on that. I mean, it was a nice way to find this surprise business as a youngster and start doing what I love, quote unquote. But eventually I wasn't in love with shooting corporate events all the time. I wasn't being creative. So a couple of years ago, I said, I need to get back to my roots. And I wrote this humor novel. And it was I want to use the word cathartic thing for me, because I really enjoyed it. And I got back to who I was as a child. I actually was listening to music from the 70s as a kid that I remember when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. Those songs brought me back to that place and reminded me who I was. And so the advice I would give is, if you're, in a business and you're making 6 figures and you're doing really well, but something seems like it's not satisfying you, figure out who you were as a kid. Where were those dreams, and where was that excitement? And if it was something creative, go do that. Don't worry about, can I sell it? Because, I don't want to waste a year writing a book I can't sell. Do it for yourself. Find the time. If you're only interested in making money and that's what you're doing, keep doing it. But I guarantee there's a lot of people in your audience, Josh, who are having a successful career, but maybe not a successful life internally. Find the thing that drives your passion and do that in addition to or instead of whatever you're doing.